So today I have some items that I recently got for the Color Computer 2 from Radio Shack, aka Tandy. This one is a later model with a full 64K.
The Color Computer line was released in the early 80s by Tandy in their Radio Shack stores, starting with the original Color Computer 1, which released with 4K of RAM. The Color Computer 2 was an updated model, which was exactly the same as far as its hardware and software, but in a more compact package. The 64K model shown here was the top of the Color Computer 2 line, and was listed for $259 in 1985. It would be followed up with the Color Computer 3, which was the last of the series.
And so for this, I recently got at the Houston Computer Warehouse Tetris and the Audio Spectrum Analyzer, both on cartridge. This is a cartridge title, and of course these aren't the original boxes that they come in. The box is about the same size as the cartridge squares. This is some sort of a universal video tape or cartridge box. Here is the manual. Go ahead and insert it while the system is off and power up the computer. Well, that didn't work. So let's try again. Oh. Cartridge. A little bit wonky. It's not how the cartridges are supposed to be. Cartridges are supposed to be fixed, and then this sleeve kind of slides back, revealing all the pins. I'm not sure what happened to this one. Let's see if we can get this to connect in. We may have a bit of an issue here. Trying to snap open cartridge without damaging the can, without damaging the label. Open up. I'm afraid there's another screw to have access to get the label out with. I'm going to have to take the label off in order to get it. This is not that, so it's slide, mark itself out. Here's the actual cartridge. So the post bar already broken off, I never went further. The actual cartridge. So these posts were already broken off. I may have broken some things further in attempting to disassemble it. Nevertheless, Let's see if we can make this thing work. No, no sound apparently. Okay. Okay, so let's try a little bit. Oh, the video quality took a dive. And see, I keep losing coordination with this. Not sure why. I'm having a hard time. Can't really see a better cable yet. Indeed, it's a pretty rough. Maximum difficulty, okay, nut, wow.
So initially what I was trying to do was to see if I could very carefully get the label off with a razor knife without damaging it. Unfortunately, everything I tried to do just seemed to wreck the label to some extent. Not sure why that is, but it's just too old and fragile. And so eventually I gave up and went ahead and just sort of cut a notch, a little flap right where the screw was that I needed to remove, and left it attached on one side with the idea that I would just be able to kind of do what I need to do and then glue it back in place, which did work out, and I was able to have the sort of labeling of the cartridge mostly intact. In the end, there's still some, I mean, obviously there's some lines you can tell that something was done, but it looks reasonable for something of its age, considering it, you know, was a wrecked cartridge that was broken on the inside. So it turned out alright. Basically just once I got it apart, mixed up some epoxy, applied a little bit of glue to help hold it together while the epoxy set, and that's pretty much it. And then just putting it back together, it just sort of claps together, and the one screw holds it securely, and then there's just a spring that attaches to sort of make the little cartridge cover sliding apparatus stay put. And that part was never really all that smooth to begin with, but it's functional and does the job. And after a few false starts. Once I put it back together, it did work consistently after that. I just needed to clean the cartridge edges, just like any other cartridge. Overall, not bad.
Alright. Huh. Success. Finally.
And here's some more footage of me trying to play the game. It's fairly obvious that I'm not particularly good at this game, though I was hampered a little bit by the control scheme, which is a little funky because of the way the arrow keys are placed on the color computer. At least on the original versions, the 1 and 2, they're separated. Left and right are on one side and up and down are on the other. That's not very unusual for computers of this time period. That inverted T shape that's standard nowadays hadn't become a standard yet. Overall, this is a pretty competent port for the time period. Main thing it's obviously lacking is music. The only sound is the little squawk when you complete a line or you lose the game. Graphically, it's alright. I mean, for what it is. The manual indicates that there's several features that are only turn on when you have it in a Color Computer 3, which is a more advanced system. So I'd like to see that at some point, but I was able to get hold of this and was able to repair it. And that's all for this cartridge. And next up, we're going to look at something a little bit different. So now we have the Audio Spectrum Analyzer cartridge. This is something a little different. Rather than a game, it's sort of a utility meant to, well, just what it says. You take in audio and it displays it on the screen with a spectrum analyzer. Kind of like something that'd be common on many software programs or audio equipment nowadays, but we're talking early 80s when this was released. And this uses the cassette interface, an adapter cable that you use to hook your color computer up to a cassette player. And that was your typical way of loading and saving programs. Most of these computers, this type of computer that was a home computer hooked to your TV, floppy drives that they were available were an expensive option. And so getting programs or recording your own programs on the cassette tape were the affordable option. So almost everyone who had one of these would have had the cable that connected it to a cassette player. And this program is meant to utilize that as an audio input, which is what it is. It just was normally not used that way. And so we'll see that momentarily. And here we have the cable that you make the connections with and the official Tandy cassette player, although you really could use any cassette player or audio source for the computer. and you can see here I'm hooking it up. I had intended to actually demonstrate it using cassette tape and using that as the audio source. Unfortunately, once I hooked it all up, I came to realize that my cassette player is broken. And fast forward and reverse work, play does not, which just makes the whole thing kind of pointless. And so I ended up using a cell phone as the audio source instead, which you'll hear in a bit. The audio quality isn't great. Using the microphone in my camera produces pretty terrible audio quality. The output is actually coming out the TV, and that's pretty decent quality. It comes in, it gets passed through from the cassette input straight through to the TV, and meanwhile it's doing the calculations to do the graphical display, and so it has a spectrum analysis, and you also see a sort of kaleidoscope mode, which are the two party tricks of this program.
Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. Spray, wipe, rinse. Dawn Power Wash.
Divide 0 by 0.
0 divided by 0 is undefined.
Tell me a joke.
Why shouldn't you write with a broken pencil? It's pointless.